مرحب مرحب بالثوار. مرحب مرحب بالثوار. مرحب مرحب بالأحرار. مرحب مرحب بالأحرار. مصر يا أم، أبطالك هم. مصر يا أم، أبطالك هم. دول علشانك شالوا الهم. دول علشانك شالوا الهم. مرحب مرحب بالثوار. مرحب مرحب بالأحرار. مرحب مرحب بالأحرار. وشكرا.
المدافعين عن الحق وعن الشرعية الدكتورة مها عزام ستتحدث إلينا باللغة الإنجليزية لكي تصل الرسالة إلى الأوروبيين، فهذا أمر مهم، فاشكروها على هذا الدور.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. This message is the message of the delegation to tell our European friends that we came here on a tour of Europe in order to explain. I am here as part of a delegation for public diplomacy, and the aim of this delegation was to go around different capitals of Europe to explain to human rights organizations and the parliaments of Europe the situation in Egypt. But let me briefly speak not to the parliaments of Europe alone or to the human rights organizations. My few words today are directed to the peoples of Europe, to the free peoples of Europe who have welcomed us and who also need to know our story. Our story to the peoples of Europe is one in which we in Egypt feel a great danger, a danger to our country and a threat to our citizens, men, women and children. The threat comes from the military that has hijacked the political process, that has stolen our democracy, that has kidnapped our elected president, Dr. Mohamed Morsi. Dr. Mohamed Morsi remains the president of Egypt. He remains my president. He remains the elected president of all Egyptians. The military in my country has ruled for 60 years. It has stolen the wealth of my nation. It has kept it back. It has not allowed it to develop and to reach its full potential. It has imprisoned political opponents, and it has fought wars in which it has lost our lands. The military is a backbone of any country, and we respect its role, but its role is not to interfere in the politics of my nation. On January the 25th, 2011, Egyptians came out to say we want a civil state. We do not want the military involved in the politics of our nation. This is a message that people in Europe should understand. Democracy is for all. Accountability and participation is for all. And the peoples of the region, from Tunisia to Egypt to Libya to Yemen, have spoken. And they have said, we want the rights that are due to all human beings. That is the right of freedom of speech, of freedom of assembly, the right to have the rule of law and respect for human rights. Those human rights today are being abused every second in Egypt. Men and women come out to protest. They don't just come out to protest as we demonstrate and protest here in freedom in the West. They are liable to be shot and imprisoned and tortured. Crimes were committed in Egypt. 4 massacres since the military coup on the 3rd of July. Massacres that constitute crimes against humanity. The crimes that were committed in Rab'a amounted to thousands of people dying. They amounted to bodies being burnt, to the injured being shot, to the lack of medical care. The story goes on and on. The evidence is there and it is recorded for generations to come. But we will not wait for generations. We want justice now. It is our right to have justice now. And we call on the peoples of Europe, the free people of Europe, to support our return to democracy, to learn more about the abuses of power that are taking place, to know that the massacres that happened were not delivered by the media sufficiently, to know that there is a blackout in Egypt. People don't know what is happening half the time. The propaganda machine of the military is used to sow hatred and civil strife between Egyptian and Egyptian. What we hear in Egypt is a fascist ideology that tells the Egyptian people to turn on their brothers and sisters because they hold a different political opinion. This is reminiscent of Europe before democracy. This is reminiscent of the early days of the 20th century in Nazi Germany. The Egyptians refuse this. We will stand up to fascism and we will stand up to discrimination. We ask you to hold our hand in a long struggle, to put pressure on your countries not to support a military coup in 2013. This is a different era. There are new generations in the Arab world as there are new generations in Europe. Together we can combat a very ugly face of fascism that is rearing its head in Syria and in Egypt and may rear its head elsewhere. It costs lives. Fascism is not a joke. It is not just rhetoric. It costs lives every single day. Every day, Egyptians come out in more numbers. They are not going to stop the determination of students on campuses. Their tanks are not going to stop the determination of Egyptians to restore their democracy and their revolution. Let me tell you here in Europe what our story is also about. It is a peaceful protest. We insist on its peacefulness. سلمية سلمية سلمية. مقاومتنا سلمية. The price will be high. The price will be high, but the price is not just for revolution. The price is for real reform. We want our institutions reformed. We want our parliament, elected parliament returned. We want our judiciary cleansed. We want those that have committed crimes against our people to face justice. Let me sum up because I don't want to take any more time. Those that have committed atrocities against our people have done so with the support of the outside world. They have done so with the support and complicity of the countries of the Gulf. The UAE and Saudi Arabia bear responsibility for the massacre of Rab'a. and their people should stand against what has happened. The peoples of Europe need to worry and consider very carefully where the spare parts and the arms are going. Are they going to kill fellow citizens in Egypt? Are they going to the Gulf states as a third party to be delivered to General Sisi to kill my people? The question needs to be asked openly. And you here today, along with your European partners in every sector and in every political party, and with pressure on your parliamentarians, need to know what your government's stance is. We are happy to live in a free Europe, but we want this freedom in our countries of origin as well. Let me add a final word. At the core of democracy is accountability. At the core of democracy is the rule of law and justice. Those who have killed the innocent for sit-ins, those who have killed the protesters, will be held accountable. We must put pressure, legal and other, to bring these people to justice. General Sisi and those who stood with him, and those that were in the interim government while the massacres happened in Rab'a and Nahda, should not be allowed to enter the free cities of Europe. The evidence is being collected, whether at the International Criminal Court or in the courts of Egypt. They will be held accountable, insha'Allah, one day. And Rab'a, we will never forget. Assalamu alaikum.